Apple just released an exclusive series. It's a very sad story, but it is one that really emphasizes the importance of planning, preparedness, mitigation. Let's use the lessons from history and let's apply it to ourselves. Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Perez.
And I'm Wesley Long.
And we're bringing you a fresh new take on disaster preparedness.
Welcome to Disaster Class.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Disaster Class. I'm Jason Perez.
And I am Wesley Long.
And Wesley, you know what the bell means.
I do. All right, everybody, class is in session.
Class is in session. So today we're going to go back a little bit, back to 2005.
Yeah.
And we're going to discuss the infamous Hurricane Katrina, which obviously left the city of New Orleans completely devastated. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we want to talk about a specific story. It's the horrific tragedy of Memorial Hospital.
Yeah.
Now, this, when I was in school, Wesley, for emergency management, this was a story, a case study that we frequently talked about. We broke down, went through a lot of the different aspects of it. Now, it's a very sad story, but it is one that really emphasizes the importance of planning, preparedness, mitigation. And so there's a book that I actually had to read for school. It's 5 Days at Memorial, written by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Sherry Fink. And it discusses the events that took place there at Memorial Hospital during Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend it if you're looking for a read. It's a really good book. But recently, Apple just released an exclusive series by the same name, 5 Days at Memorial, and I think Sherry Fink was actually a producer on the show too. Yeah. And so that just came out in August of this past year. So we're gonna actually, Wesley and I are gonna watch it today and give you our feedback and our insight. Episode one.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like, I think 8 or 9 episodes in the first season so far. Okay. But we're going to go in and we're just going to watch the first episode, and we're going to give you our reactions as emergency managers, as first responders, to kind of give you some insight.
And as disaster class teachers.
And as disaster class, yeah. But essentially, if you don't know anything about the Memorial Hospital incident, essentially what happened was...
And I really don't. I don't know much.
I mean,
right?
a lot.
Honestly,
it's interesting. I mean, obviously, I studied a lot about it, but a lot of people that I've talked to don't know really much of anything about it.
Yeah.
But it's and there's a lot of really unfortunately big lessons that were learned, but important lessons that really emphasize, the need for preparedness, for planning, for mitigation. Yep. But essentially what happened was, so Memorial Hospital, which is located in New Orleans, it's a hospital running 24/7, 365.
I'm a hospital employee. I get that.
We don't get days off for the weather.
Yep.
So they had to, basically ride out the storm. Now, the hospital survived the initial impact of the storm. But then when the levees broke and the massive flooding that happened, backup generators were lost, and they basically essentially found themselves on an island in the middle of the city with no help in sight.
No access to resources.
And there was, so they lost power, they lost water, a lot of resources they had. And so you had the staff and the patients now were just trapped. They couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't leave. And they were stuck there for a total of 5 days in just truly horrendous conditions. And sadly, 45 people died as a result. So now what's the big lessons, though?
45 died at that hospital.
45 died. We're not going to spoil on how they died because that plays into a big part of the story and all that. But the real key takeaway, and we're going to kind of give you some insight as we watch the episode, some of the key lessons learned. But much of this situation could have been prevented with good planning, good preparedness, good mitigation strategies, and maybe a lot of these lives could have been saved.
Wow.
So Wesley and I are going to go ahead and watch the first episode of 5 Days at Memorial. And while we watch, we're going to go ahead and play you the trailer so that you can get a little sneak peek on, and then hopefully maybe you can go and watch the series yourself.
After we survived Hurricane Katrina, we thought that we could survive anything. And we were wrong.
They found 45 dead bodies there. Now, does that make any sense to you? I'm under a great deal of pressure to look into what happened.
There were 5 days, the most ungodly conditions.
We are getting all of these patients out of here. We are nurses, and we're gonna get it done.
As long as we don't get left behind. We have to be realistic about the situation.
There is nothing else to do for them except to make them comfortable.
So what are we talking about?
They asked me to look into the deaths at Memorial Medical Center.
And the Attorney General's office is focusing their investigation on you.
They're suggesting that some of their patients' lives may have been ended.
I am sure that patients do not suffer pain.
Some people were afraid of people outside of the hospital. But for me, it was the other way around.
If you would give me choice between comforting a patient, possibly quickening his death, or abandoning patients to suffer a slow death, what would you choose to do?
Let me say goodbye! Come on, man! Stay back!
All I did was try to help people. That is all I did.
So, what are your thoughts, Wesley?
Where to begin?
There's a lot wrapped Jason. Up in this story.
Jason.
Yeah.
I'm flabbergasted.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many things. Like, I can see why this became almost like a case study for you guys with your master's program, because powerful, first of all, the powerful story. This is, I mean, I only saw episode 1. All I've seen is the first episode. I have no idea where this is all going to go. Mm-hmm. So many things. For our viewers, right?
And there may be some spoiler alerts here. We're just going to get that out in front because we're going to talk about some specific things.
Yeah, well, you should have paused and went and watched the episode.
Yeah, so do that now. You haven't done it.
Yeah, pause now.
Go watch, and then come back and we'll talk about it.
Okay.
All right, everyone. So we're going to pause real quick for this week's sponsors.
When you need an emergency plan, you need Doberman Emergency Management. Whether you are buying a home and want to know about your local hazards, or you are a professional needing additional support, Doberman Emergency Management can help. Visit DobermanEMG.com today to learn more.
Instinct Ready is here to help educate, prepare, and equip you for disasters. Everything from disaster preparedness education to quality survival products. Use promo code DISASTERClass at InstinctReady.com today for 10% off site-wide, because preparedness starts at home.
All right, let's head back to the show.
Right? Right? Like,
yeah.
What? Yeah, there's a lot here that we could consume, especially for our audience here with Disaster Class. One of the things that hit me, and Jason and I were able to watch it here in our shops. We were able to pause and talk in between, so nobody was bothered by us talking during the show. That scene when the gentleman came home and his wife was there, and they saw on the news that mandatory evacuations were ordered. And I think the wife said to her husband, she was like, your mom is in the hospital there.
Yeah.
It got real quick. And then she asked the question, she's like, what are we going to do? Is she taken care of? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah.
And I actually had Jason pause it. I was like, we have to talk about that for a second, because what we always preach, planning, preparedness, right? Do all these things in advance. And we talk about the special consideration, right? In our CEP class, we talk about 1 area for special considerations, things we have to think about and manage that might be a little bit, specific to you and your circumstances. How many of our viewers have that type of situation where they have a loved one or a parent or a child or someone placed in specialty care that's not in their house? Mm-hmm. Now you have to rely on their plan. Yeah. And then how do you communicate between your plan and their plan? All of that is doable if you plan ahead.
Correct.
Right? It's 100% doable if you plan ahead. That's just a whole nother layer of stuff that you have to plan for in your emergency action plan, in your reunification plan. That's part of your special considerations. What do? You just hope that hospital, and in this case, it's not horrible yet. It's only the first episode. Things are just went south, they're near the end of the episode. But you hope they have a really, really good plan, because your loved one is depending on them, and you may be powerless to assist them if they're not in your home.
Correct.
So very poignant, poignant. And again, something very, very specific that our viewers, our listeners, that's something you guys, you're going to want to get ahead of that. Mm-hmm. Going to want to get ahead of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the as I wrote down a couple of points that I just noticed. And so one of the things was, so here is this hospital is located in New Orleans.
Yep.
Was like
known for water,
and because New Orleans is below sea level,
right?
So that's an issue. So let's talk about hazard identification and risk assessment. You have a city located under sea level,
right, with water all around it,
along the coast,
right?
Prone to hurricanes. So talking about our hazard identification risk assessment. Hazard number 1, flooding. You would think. So recognizing that hazard, okay, and then we talk about community lifelines and things like that. So we understand now, here's flooding is going to be an issue. So what did the hospital do? Their backup generators were located in the basement. The main power. So if the hospital loses power, these backup generators are going to go online.
Right.
And it's located in the basement. So what happens here in the case of Memorial Hospital, floodwaters come in, knock out the generators.
Yeah, we just saw the power go out at the end of the episode.
Yeah, they left us with a cliffhanger. Power went out.
Yeah. But even before that, can we back up just a second? Because you're 100% right. You hit the nail on the head, right? Hazard identification, risk assessment. So that's step 1. We teach that in CEP, right? Mm-hmm. How robust was the flood plan in her binder?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they showed her, they had hundreds of pages on various.
So it looks like you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Like there were some things at the outset. I'm like, okay, this is actually really cool. They have an incident commander nominate. Okay, that's great. They have
someone in charge.
They have someone in charge. They have a flow of communication. They had the unit leaders that all had a walkie-talkie, a radio, so they could be in communication with the incident commander. I'm like, okay, they're doing some things right. I'm like, okay, this is really good.
I thought some stuff out.
At first, I was like, man, I'm okay. They're prepped. First of all, I asked this question maybe like 10, 15 minutes in. I think I asked you, I was like, what are her credentials to be the incident commander? Like, who is she? And then we find out in that one scene, she's just a nursing director. Not that it's just a nursing director, because what nursing directors do is amazing. But that is a completely different skill set.
Yeah, and there's specific training that you need to be able to step into that role.
To be the emergency manager for the hospital. Like, that's a really, really big deal that takes specialized training. So kind of like the training we have coming up in Orlando.
Yeah.
DIPOP, dynamic populations, right? Being able to manage that. There's 6 different competencies that are being taught to emergency managers so they can be better equipped for things like this. But so about halfway through the first episode, she's then faced with some things. She's getting information coming in.
Information's coming in. Yep.
Information's coming in, right? So you're instant commander. You've got radios. You've got people. You've got a communication plan. Great. Data's coming in. She starts now asking some questions. Again, questions that should have been asked at the outset.
Correct.
And then she goes to the binder. She's like, oh my goodness, what if we do have to evacuate? So halfway through is the first time she thought in her mind that evacuation might be a thing.
Correct. And then she realizes there's no plan in place.
So she goes and looks for it.
For an evacuation.
And there's no plan for flooding.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to have like dead air when we talk on the podcast. But we need to take a moment of silence. They're in New Orleans, the hospital, a place that is accustomed to and designed to take on extra people and be a place of refuge. Awesome.
And they did that during in the situation.
Yep.
It wasn't just patients. They let
All their people
from the neighborhood come in and use it as a shelter.
And that's their process. Fantastic. Love it. 2 thumbs up. Located, we've said it before, we're going to say it again, in New Orleans.
Below sea level.
Below sea level. And they have a binder of hazard identification risk assessment that should have been done by some emergency manager. And she flips to the page for flooding.
There's no evacuation plan.
And there's no evacuation plan. Plan doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody sat down and thought, hey, what if we have to leave? What?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Ring the bell. Class dismissed. No, I'm sorry. But for real though.
Yeah. No, huge miss. Huge miss.
What?
Yeah. And just going back to that. So again, highlighting, right, planning, preparedness, mitigation. This happens well before the event. Well before. And so creating a hospital evacuation plan or any evacuation plan, any plan, doesn't matter what it is. It's all happens well in advance of the event. So now again, going back to now the generators.
Yeah.
So they had and they brought up that one of the maintenance people, I forget exactly who he was, but he brought up the concern that if there's that last hurricane they had,
he brought up the concern, management.
What happens if there's flooding is we're going to lose the backup generator system. Brings that up to upper management, gets pushed aside.
Yep.
And so now they're like realizing the threat is real, and it kept getting pushed away. Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
So crazy.
So now here's the thing that I think is really, really valuable for our viewers, our listeners. Most of us are not going to be in the position of being an incident commander for a hospital. Most of us are not going to be in that position to be an emergency manager for that hospital. We're just people. Take the concept of a memorial and bring it to your house.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Bring it to your home, your residence. You are, each of us in our families, we are the emergency manager. We're the incident commander for our family, for our personal residence. So you have to be thinking that way. All the things we look at memorial and say, wow, that was really poorly done. Are you doing that at home?
Good questions.
Where's your generator? Do you have a generator? Do you have a backup plan for power? Where is that plant? Where is that power plant? Do you have redundancy?
Do you have an evacuation plan?
Do you have an evacuation plan for flooding? When do you know when it's time to leave your house or your residence?
Yeah.
Right? So it's very easy to sit back and like, oh my goodness, what are they doing? They should have time out. All of us are in that situation right now in our own personal places of dwelling. Are we doing this? Are we putting in that work? Because we are our own incident commanders. We are our own emergency managers for our own places of dwelling.
Correct. And fast forward in time now, like it's been years since the Memorial incident. And so now there's mandations for hospitals and healthcare facilities to have evacuation plans and go about all these processes so that we don't have a repeat of this this really terrible situation. Yeah. But for you, our listeners, the just everyday people, you're just a homeowner, you have a family, no one is mandating that you have an evacuation plan. No one's mandating that you have a shelter-in-place plan or that you've go through and can create all these things. But just because it's not mandated doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Right.
And so we take the lessons from these real-life events, and is an unfortunate and is as tragic as they are.
And the mandates always come after, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate these
cars were flying around well before they had seatbelts.
Correct.
Right. It didn't mean seatbelts were a bad idea at the beginning.
Yeah.
Just they hadn't thought of it and they hadn't had a reason to put them in yet. So that's how it works.
Yeah. but let's use the lessons from history.
That's it.
And let's apply it to ourselves. And so that's again why a purpose of disaster class, purpose of what we do with our community emergency planning class and everything is to take these principles, let's look at these case studies, these lessons learned, and let's put it into practice for ourselves with our families, which are, for us, that's our most valuable thing.
That's it. And we are the emergency managers for our families. Yeah. That's the takeaway.
I like that. I think we should get that on a t-shirt.
We should. I'm my own emergency manager.
I am my own emergency manager.
Nice. With a little mantra. I am the incident commander. Look at me. I am the commander now. Sorry.
So if you haven't watched 5 Days at Memorial yet, go watch it. It's very intriguing. We're going to keep watching it and probably bring
from a case study standpoint. It is so valuable. So valuable. And that's what we're going to do. We're looking at it that way for you guys, our audience. We always try to look at things through the lens of the everyday person, right? That's kind of what sets us apart a little bit here on the Readiness Lab. So we're not necessarily going to be calling out from the emergency manager standpoint what the professional should be doing.
Yeah.
We're going to be trying to look at what we can do as everyday people, because we feel, like we've said a bunch of times, preparedness starts at home.
Yeah. Actually, quick thing that we didn't talk about, but it was in the first episode. They pictured the one doctor showing up to work, and all she had was a little 6-pack of water and a can opener and a couple cans of tuna.
So the supplies.
And that was her supply thing.
We also didn't talk about the doctor that showed up with a gun.
Oh, yeah. Like, what's up with that?
Where's our security protocol? So many
questions.
What is that going to come into play later on? Because he doesn't look like the most stable of individuals. He's sitting there fighting with his wife about the dog, talking about how he should be able to bend the rules because he's a doc. I don't like any of that situation.
Yeah.
I'm going to be watching that one. Yeah, I'm going to be watching that one. I don't like any of that.
But we could talk about real quick. I mean, so now, and maybe you might be in a profession where you have to go in regardless of what the weather is.
Correct.
Right? For us, we're used to that as responders. But there's other professions too that, you have to show up to work regardless of.
Department of Transportation, because it's snowing out doesn't mean you get the day off. You have to go clear the roads.
Correct. Yeah. So then what a good call out. And the nurses were making fun of the supplies that she brought. They're like, that's it? That's all you brought?
This must be your first rodeo.
Yeah, and she's like, yes, this is my first hurricane at the hospital.
What are you going to do?
So be giving some foresight, right? Forethought into what you're going to bring. Like if you have to go in during this type of event, like when I go to work in a snowstorm, if I know it's going to be a bad weather, like when I worked Hurricane Sandy, like I took a bunch of stuff with me.
You got to load up.
And I made sure I had food, I had snacks, I had all my little things. And so little throughout. So we've created at Instinct Ready a little product. It's called a QuikPack.
Yeah.
And basically it's like a really small kind of portable survival kit. It's got some basic first aid things.
Yeah, it's got a couple little things in it. It's more like a portable ambulance more than anything else. It gives you the things that you need to take care of. It's really medical based.
Yeah, a lot of it's medical based. But you got flashlight, multi-tool, different things like that.
Door stopper. Yeah. You've got some things in it. But again, you got to think about your gear, right? This gets back
what are you going to bring with you?
Gear dose, right? You got to think about that. As you're going into work, when everybody else is being told to stay home, how long are you going to be at work? How long are you really going to be at work, right? It's different than how long you were scheduled to be at work.
Yeah.
What stuff do you need? Take care of yourself, take care of your family, right? So all of it.
Because even in the episode, she's like, well, at most we'll be here 3 days.
At most.
But what she brought was not 3 days worth of stuff. Right. So, put some forethought into it.
Yep. Agreed. A lot of call outs here.
Yeah. And I'm sure we're going to be watching this series as over the next few weeks, and we'll be coming back to with some more tidbits and lessons learned from it.
Love it.
But anyways, that concludes this episode of Disaster Class. But Wesley, as always, there's homework.
Yeah, this homework is fun, right? You do same thing like always. Like, subscribe, leave us the 5-star rating, give us a thumbs up. But this is the part that's fun that makes it a little bit different. After you've watched the episode, or if you've already seen it before, please comment on something that you learned. And again, think about it this perspective. Looking at Memorial like it's your house. What is the communication plan? Is there a clear lead? Is there that the breakdown of responsibility. They had the radios for communication. What's my communication plan with my family? What if everybody's not here? How can I communicate with them? What can I do? Two-way communication, right? Because the incident commander needs to get all this information, be able to make a decision, and then get it back out to people. So this time for these episodes, and as we do this sporadically as we go through each episode of this show, we want to hear your comments. Be thinking about, oh, I liked this, I didn't like this, that was just crazy, why did dude bring a gun? Whatever it is, put those in the comments so we can talk about that and generate some conversation about that, because I think conversation about this is going to be extremely valuable. So we're looking forward to your comments.
Yeah, we want to hear what lessons you gathered from it.
Yep.
And as always, if you have a question, you have a preparedness tip, a disaster story to share, send us an email at disasterclass@instinctready.com or send us a message at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. And doing so will put you in the running to be featured on the show and win some cool prizes. So thanks, as always, for tuning in to Disaster Class. Stay educated.
Stay prepared.
Stay equipped. Class dismissed. Disaster Class is part of the Readiness Lab, the home for podcasts, webinars, and training in the field of emergency and disaster services.